Yeah, this book came about after me discovering and finding my dad after 30 plus years of looking for him on Skid Row. I grew up in the 70s, my dad and my mom in a two-parent household with my dad and mom in Inglewood, and right around about the third grade, my mom left my dad for several reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is because he had started using drugs.
They give a lot of problems to drugs, before the drugs. Drugs like an easy life, they're different. It make it worse though. Put you further away from your family. And so, try it for a while. You come to think on your own, you know a different improvement in yourself, you know, bring you down lower and lower.
So we left and went to go live with my grandparents, and from that point, I had sporadic relationship with my dad and eventually lost touch with him. And from the time that I was in elementary school all the way through adulthood, lost contact with my dad and never talked to him.
My father was a great influence on him, and also my brother. And he had coaches at school, teachers, as well as when he went on to college, he had upperclassmen influences on him that helped him through some of those times in college.
I had father figures in my life, but really wanted to still have that authentic relationship with my biological father. And so just really wanted to reconnect with him, really wanted to find him, and really wanted reconciliation between us.
Just stay away from it. That drug bring you down. Before you get euphoria, and you up, and you on top of everything then. You come on off it, back in the same drag. They can waste your money, waste your life, waste your breath.
As I remember back when my son was 12 years old, how he began to ask about seeing his father. And on several occasions, my brother would set up these meetings, but he would always be a no-show. And I wanted to tell my children, don't ask me anymore about seeing your father. I said, because he don't want to see you.
I really had to go through a process of forgiveness. And so even in the book, Prodigal Father, it's really about the story of the prodigal son that Jesus tells in that parable. And so you know, with my story of the prodigal father, you know, I often ask, well, what happens when those tables are turned and the son has to be the father and the father has to be the son? And so I kind of see that story of forgiveness through the parable of the prodigal son in the Bible.
Forgiveness is for you, not really for the other person, because we can walk around with all this bitterness and hate in our hearts for someone, and that other person is going on with their life, doing what they do, and here you are still stewing in the same place.
I would oftentimes wonder where my dad was. I knew he was on Skid Row. I knew he was living on the streets, but did not know exactly where. I went and searched for him and tried to find him and reconnected for a brief moment, but then lost touch with him again. It wasn't until Cinco de Mayo of 2017 where I actually reconnected with my dad. I was in a meeting working with some pastors, and I got a phone call from California Hospital. And they were asking me a couple of questions over the phone, like, is your name Peter Watts? And I was like, yeah. They said, do you pastor a church in Los Angeles? I said, yeah. And they said, we think we found your dad. And I was just in shock. I didn't know, what to believe or what to do, but I ended the meeting that I was in, and I remember driving down the freeway, and I called my wife and told her to meet me there at the hospital, and got to California Hospital and walked in that room, and I saw him for the first time after almost 30 years. And I actually was going, and as I was driving down the freeway, I was going with anger in my heart, like really ready to give him a piece of my mind, tell him of all of the hurt that he's caused and all of the things that he missed throughout the years, like missing the birth of his grandchildren, missing me graduating from college, my wedding, missing just a lot of significant and important things in my life. Really wanted to give him a piece of my mind about that, but the closer and closer I got to the hospital, and the closer and closer I got to his hospital bed, the more I just felt the Spirit melt away that anger, and really caused me to have a heart of forgiveness for him.
It was rough then. You might have gone for you. I'm glad to see you, though. I'm alive. It's a good thing.
Well, my son became the man he is today because I prayed a lot for my children.
Even before they had the hashtag of Black Girl Magic, my mom was Black Girl Magic, and just thinking about all of the things that she had to endure, and even now with me reconnecting with them, and she's been praying for me and in our relationship, and so I'm just excited and happy that my mother is as strong as she's been.
I would just encourage anybody out there, no matter what your situation is to just trust in the Lord. Stand strong, because life has a lot of disappointments. Trust in the Word of God. Put these situations in His hand and allow Him to set you free. We're going to still walk around. We may still have those scars, those disappointments, but we can't let that overtake us.
There are a lot of people that are out there who grow up without their fathers, without their biological fathers. There are a lot of people who are fathers who don't have relationships with their own sons and daughters. And so I hope that when people read this book, that they find it in their own hearts to begin that process of forgiving their own fathers, their own brothers, their own uncles and cousins, and even for fathers to really forgive themselves for not having relationships with their own children. A lot of times, we believe the lies that the enemy tells us about ourselves and about our past, and that's what's keeping a lot of people from reconciling. And so I hope that when people read this book, that they find it in themselves and find it in their heart to begin reconciling with their own fathers. And so if there are fathers out there, if there are sons and daughters out there who don't have relationships with their biological fathers, that they would begin that search and looking for their fathers and reconcile with them. And then also there are folks that are out there who can't reconcile with their biological fathers for whatever reason. It might be because their father has passed away, or their father's in a situation where they don't have the capacity to forgive. Like in my case, my father, because he used drugs for so long, he really still does not have the capacity to say that I'm sorry. And I still have to live with that and accept that. And so in the book, I talk about forgiveness, and forgiveness being a process of grief and forgiveness. And it's almost like going through the grieving process and knowing that this person does not have the capacity to say I'm sorry, but you still go through that process. So in the future, I just hope that my dad and I would continue to build this relationship between us. He at this point in his life only has like 10% of his heart functioning. He's using oxygen tanks now. He's in and out of the hospital every now and then, and so I've been trying to get him help. Get him housing, get him health care and things like that. So I just hope that he's restored in his relationship with God. I hope that he can live out the rest of his life guilt-free, knowing that I don't hold anything against him and he can forgive himself and that God has forgiven him. I had an opportunity about 2 weeks ago when I went to go visit him. I had an opportunity to pray the sinner's prayer with him, and he accepted Christ for the first time in his life. And so that was a big win for me. So if nothing else happens beyond this point, it's well with my soul that I was able to lead him to Christ, and that at this point he would be able to spend the rest of his life in eternity in the arms of God.
Peter was Jr., and look at you, you minister and everything. I'm proud of that.